repatriation assistant at the American Museum of Natural History. I didn't really know what it was at the time, but they were looking for people with BAs in anthropology. And I thought, okay, rather than doing temp work and all these other things that I was sort of doing in New York City, I thought, okay, I can actually use my degree to get a job. And I got the job. And I was there for maybe 3 years and just learned so much. And it was a fantastic experience. But what I realized is that if I wanted to keep doing that work and really do a better job with the evaluation and be able to sort of move up in the field of repatriation, I needed to get a graduate degree. So I went to Southern Methodist University to get a PhD in anthropology. And I was a little bit different from the rest of my cohort, I guess, in that I kind of knew from the start that I didn't want to go into academia, that I wanted to go the more applied route. But, you know, my advisor was very supportive, and, you know, I did all the traditional PhD stuff, and I did field work, and I, you know, wrote my dissertation, and my specialty was Southwestern archaeology. And then I was lucky enough to get a pre-doctoral fellowship at the Smithsonian to sort of help me finish up some of my dissertation research. And I was sort of able to reconnect to the museum world that way, and ended up with a job at National Museum of Natural History and Repatriation. And so I was there for a number of years. So in total, like around 18 years working between the American Museum of Natural History, National Museum of Natural History, and now NMAI, working in sort of applied anthropology, doing repatriation work. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
No, that's great. That's great. That's a long path. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've already got some great questions coming in. Keep them coming, guys. So Logan, if you could tell us the same, what's your story, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. And thanks for tuning in. I know this is a very strange time. So I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy and staying home. I would normally be doing this from my office on the National Mall in the museum, but here we are at home. So I'm an archaeologist. I began in that path, also sort of stumbled into anthropology a little bit, was sort of casting around for a lot of different disciplines and interested in what I could pursue during my undergraduate time. And I had a job for a couple summers as a national park ranger at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky, where I'm from. And that sort of illuminated to me archaeology a little bit more concretely, because the archaeology in that cave system is absolutely amazing, because it's a dry cave, it's well preserved. Have you still got me there, Eric?
Yeah, you're fine. We got you.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
So things just sit on the surface and preserve incredibly well. So it's impossible to ignore sort of the really long-term history of the place, because you see such amazing preservation of organic remains, of artifacts, of sort of the traces of human activity. And that's what really got me interested in it. And so I sort of started to combine my interests in archaeology and long-term human behavior and my interests in plants and in biology. And so what this did was lead me to a path in research of archaeobotany, sort of how humans interact with plants through time. And that's what I do now. So I'm an archaeobotanist, and particularly what I use is ancient DNA and ancient genomics to try and learn about the interactions between humans and the environment through time. A lot of times that brings my research into trying to understand the domestication of plants. That's really my focus area. And so I do that mostly throughout the Americas, in Eastern North America, as well as in South America and Central America and Mexico, working on plants including cassava, currently also called yucca, also called manioc, 3 different names for the same plant. We've done work on maize, on squash, and currently we're working on several different crops. So my role in the Smithsonian, I'm a curator at the Natural History Museum, and I'm primarily a research archaeologist. So most of what I do is research, but also I work with collections. I handle things like loan requests and sampling requests, and sort of part of a curator's role is caretaking collections, and another big part of it is research. So those are the main responsibilities that I juggle. So after sort of having my archaeology epiphany at Mammoth Cave, I went on and got my degree at Penn State in the anthropology program there. Following that, I did another postdoc at Penn State, so I stayed on there for a couple extra years. I then moved to the United Kingdom and did a fellowship independently in a life sciences school at the University of Warwick. And I was the only archaeologist in sight. It was a lot of biologists, and it was attached to the medical school as well. So it was really a cool experience for a different perspective on research and sort of how we could combine my knowledge and skill set with what I was interacting with there. And then I came back to the DC area about 3 years ago, and that's where we are today.
That's great, guys. Thank you so much for sharing. We've gotten several really good questions, and I'm gonna try this for now. I know Catherine Osby, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that, is on the line. Catherine, I don't know if you've got a microphone, but you, whoops, I think is that Catherine? I think I missed here. Hold on. There we go. Let's see if Catherine is available to talk. Catherine, can you hear us okay?
Hi, yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We sure can. If you would, please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for hosting this panel. I'm an intern right now in American History and Culture, doing research for the Center of Global Slavery. And I graduated from UCLA in June 2019, and I studied global studies and human biology and society, which also has a focus on genetics and human environmental interactions. So that's kind of similar, Logan, to what you study a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recently graduated in June 2019, and I'm trying to figure out what my next step should be. Both of my majors at UCLA were very interdisciplinary, so I know a little bit about a lot of different things. So
you're okay, Catherine. So talk to us. So what's your question, if you would?
Yeah. So I had two questions. The first one was, at this meeting we had for the interns, they mentioned how sometimes the contract positions or other positions at Smithsonian are posted not online, but through an email list that kind of just circulates amongst Smithsonian employees. So I was wondering if there is an email list for anthropology or natural history related contract positions.
And what's your other question, real quick?
Yeah, my other question was, how did you guys research about the different grad school programs and decide which grad school was best for you?
All right. Hey, Catherine, thank you so much. So the first one, and either Logan or Risa, take it away. In terms of, and I could talk about this too, but what's up with that contractor thing? Well, how's that work?
I mean, for us at NMAI, there's nothing formal, like a special listserv for that or a special email list. It's sort of department by department. When they have contracting needs, then you send out a request for proposals to people that you know, and then they forward it on to people. So it's a little bit of a network, I guess, but there isn't a formal system for it, at least for smaller types of contracts at our museum. I don't know how it is in anthropology department at NMNH.
I think it's a mix. There is some of that where it is, I have a specific need. I know a specific small network of people who can satisfy that immediately. It might not require relocation. It might be a very short-term contract. And then there's also, more advertised ones. So I think the longer term ones that would be a stable job for any significant period of time, those are going to be the ones that are advertised. Those are going to be the ones that are much more accessible. So I don't think, Catherine, that you're missing out on a lot of really substantive opportunities in case there's one that's, I know this one contractor was finished and I need a 6-week person to do a specific bit of research. That's, in my experience, the kind of thing that would be more circulated within network. So generally speaking, the substantive contracts will be publicly available. that's.
And Catherine, I would just add, and I bet Risa and Logan will agree, is, you know, a really great strategy is just letting people know, right? Is, you know, is being awesome, showing them what you can do, showing them that you're a rock star, and then just letting people know that you're out there and you're available, and just being present. And that way, if and when a contract that's relevant to what you're interested in or what you can do comes up, people will think of you. Easier said than done, but that's kind of a way to do it. I know we'd also had, yeah, go ahead, Logan.
I just want to add, that's a great point. And one way to sort of get on that radar is to reach out to curators, to research staff who have interests aligning with yours and say, hey, I'm here, here's my skill set, here's what I'm looking to learn. If there's any contracts, please keep me in your list. And obviously that's not going to produce a lot right away, but I get a lot of those emails and I take them really seriously.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we also had a question from Jemima Georges. Jemima, I don't know if you can talk, if you're at a place to talk, but you can if you've got a microphone. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you had a great question about the current world.
Yes. So first of all, I really want to thank you guys for just taking your time out and giving us all this opportunity. For me, I feel like it's not easy to find. But my question was, so we're all in this coronavirus pandemic crises, and it's hurting a lot of people financially and with their occupations. And I was wondering what kind of effect that may have or may be having on you guys.
Yeah, it's a great, Risa, what do you think? How is the COVID-19 affecting your world professionally?
I mean, I'm lucky, and Logan hopefully will feel the same way, that in research positions, I mean, honestly, I can do 90 to 95% of my work from home relatively easily. So, I feel really blessed that my job allows this. And it's not only that it allows it, but it's actually quite, other than, the weirdness of having all of my family at home at the same time, my children doing schoolwork on the side, I'm lucky that my job is conducive to being at home. Eventually I'm going to run out of library resources and I'm going to regret not having the library open, but there's so much online now, and I have, so that research piece I can do. The piece that's an unknown for us in our repatriation work is consulting with the tribes and their bandwidth and capacity to prioritize the repatriation work right now. They've got their own issues dealing with the virus, on the reservations. There's all sorts of, issues and problems that they have on top of, the regular healthcare system. So repatriation may be on the back burner for a little bit for them, but in terms of what I can do to prepare for the time that they are ready to talk to us again, the various representatives that we're, in the middle of talking, working with, then, there's a lot that I can do in the meantime.
Right.
Yeah. And Logan, how about you? How has, and I'm even curious, is COVID-19 in terms of, the impact of mass pandemics, I'm sure, in terms of the evolution of domestication of plants, I'm curious, how are you looking at all this, man? And how does it affect your work?
Yeah, there's certainly, I am in the same situation as Risa, where I can relocate my work to home. And so in an immediate sense, I'm certainly one of the lucky ones. And I certainly feel very fortunate for the opportunity to be able to continue working. In a little bit less material sense, and I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling this, this is a really weird thing. This is incredibly distracting and distressing. And it's been important to me, even though I can keep doing my work, to say, okay, I need to give myself permission to step back a little. We don't need to be at full productivity right now. We don't need to be beating ourselves up for not being able to stay focused on work at all times. And I think that's important, not just for those of us who can telework entirely, but for everyone to take a step back and say, this really is unprecedented. And so, that's the way in which it's been affecting me. And I appreciate, Jemima, I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, and Jemima.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go finish, man. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, and so in a practical sense, I've been able to move my office operations home. It's certainly disrupting a few odd trips and collections, things like that. fairly minimal in the grand scheme. In another sense, yes, it's very disruptive. It's going to be very disruptive for a while, and we're all going to have to adapt for a bit.
Yeah, and I think a lot about, in terms of career stuff, future of work, and this will have impact on the future of work forever, and it's going to force innovation, and it's going to be a mixed bag. I mean, but those of you who are younger, who are on this call, who maybe were really little when stuff like 9/11 happened, this is a big deal. And I can say that as an older person myself, who has some perspective, although not as much as some. So Elizabeth Rios Brooks had a question. Elizabeth, I don't know if you've got audio or not. Are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
If you would, go ahead and ask your question, if you would, please.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today with you guys. So I do have a few questions. First, would you guys suggest working before going to graduate school or going straight into graduate school? And then I also had another question for Logan. So did studying in the UK deter or help you in the process of finding a job in the US? Because I am looking at a few museum studies degree in Amsterdam, and I wanted to know your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can start on the second part first, if you want. Thanks for that, Elizabeth. So it helped me. So specifically, I was there after I'd done my degree and after I'd done a postdoc here. So I was a faculty member funded through a research grant. And so it did really help me, and especially being in a different setting, it gave me sort of a set of skills that I could then bring into job interview situations and say, here's a little bit of breadth of experience. And I always think breadth of experience is very often a good idea. So it's going to depend on the circumstances as to whether that particular program in Amsterdam, for example, is the right fit for you. But for me, it was a beneficial thing career-wise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Really appreciate it. So we also had a question from Emily Turpak, who had a question. Emily, I don't know if you've got audio, or if I can pronounce your name correctly, but if you would, ask your question, please.
I do have audio. Thank you so much for giving your time. My name is Emily. I'm currently a master's student and researcher in Mesoamerican bioarchaeology and paleopathology nutrition at the University of Virginia. And it's been so wonderful to hear about all your career paths so far. I had the opportunity to work as an intern at NMNH. About 2 years ago, I worked doing a biodiversity project, and I absolutely loved it there. I'd love to work there forever if I could. I want to pursue research and curation in the long term of my career, but I think that my department is pushing me into doing more things geared towards getting a career in academia. And I was wondering what methods I could do to perform research and go forward in my own career rather than what my advisors want me to do.
Oh, those pesky advisors, Emily, thank you so much. So doctors, what do you think here?
I having gone through a program where literally everybody else was going into academia and didn't really understand that was not where I was headed. I think, you just have to, gonna sound trite, I guess, but stick to what you really want to do and realize that the skills that you're learning in a more traditional grad school setting are going to be applicable no matter what you do. So all the skills that the research skills, the writing skills, all of that you can use as a curator, and being a curator in a museum can also be more of an academic, there are different types of museum and different types of curator roles. So, and maybe just to tie into one of the questions that we didn't answer about working or going straight to grad school, like sometimes you don't know exactly what you want to do without taking some time. If you know what you want to do and you're straight in grad school and you're very clear, then that's fine. But, that's another way to sort of look around a little bit and figure out what your path is going to be before you go to grad school. I mean, some people don't know and they just go straight and they figure it out when they're there. But, maybe it helps to have an idea of what you want to do and, just sort of look around for different ways of getting the skills that you need, even if your program is not necessarily fostering that specific career path.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that that yeah, for me, the experience was much like Risa says, that it was a shared set of skills. So to be competitive for the curator position, which I have now, I had to have the same CV as if I was to be competitive for a professorship somewhere else. So it really is, in this museum, that's the way it tends to go. They are close to academic positions. And so it is, it's publications, it's outreach, it's, sort of the same set of skills and the same set of sort of CV lines that are going to make you competitive for either. And so how you can then shape your experience if you know you want to go toward a museum setting, I would say, get involved in as many museum-based internships, fellowships as possible. Always be applying for those. Always be thinking in collections terms. See if you can write blogs. See if you can write, social media-based outreach. See if you can do anything to sort of get any sort of collections-based research experience that you can, and to sort of really build that side of your experience. Because otherwise, it's you still gotta publish, still gotta do research, still gotta go to conferences, all of that. So what you're looking for then, if you know you want to do museum work, is to sort of try and build those sets of skills. I'll say as well, I didn't have that skill set coming into this job. I came in as an academic. And I had done a lot of collections-based research, but I didn't have a museum background. And so, yeah, the fact that you're thinking about it now already puts you ahead of the curve. And to the other question from Elizabeth about whether to go directly or wait to go to grad school, I had that experience of thinking, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it, and it worked out great. I never. There were times during grad school when I wish I had taken time, but then. In the end, I was happy with the choice I made, but that's really, you got to feel it out for yourself a little bit. And none of us are going to be able to answer that question for you. And it is fine to go into it thinking this seems like something I might like to explore, and to not be absolutely sure about your career path. Because that's absolutely what I did. So I think it worked out okay.
And I just want to add one more thing. So I think what Logan said about collection-based research is an excellent. So, if I were on a hiring committee looking for a curator at a museum, I would want to at least, even if the individual didn't have experience working in a museum, to make sure that you saw that they understood the importance of collections. And doing a research project with museum collections anywhere will give you that, bona fides, of like saying, you understand the importance.
So if it helps, and again, this is a little bit of my own propaganda, and I hear this in what Risa and Logan are both saying is a really good compass, folks, for trying to figure some of this stuff out is the thing you're pursuing in demand. And that's not a sit down and think it through exercise. That's a talk to people like these people or do some research exercise. And whether you're going to grad school or not, whether, whatever you do, as long as it's building career capital in a thing that the universe needs. And so if you just heard Risa, she's saying, what the universe needs? The universe needs people that understand collections. That's a perfect example. And as long as you can dial in on the things the universe needs, and again, this is not based on kind of what you feel or what you think, you've got to ask. That's a great compass. Sometimes one could argue, but again, I take Logan's point too. It's different for everybody. So Logan, you had a couple of questions specifically from Natalie Ginez. Natalie, I don't know if you can hear us or not. It sounds like you can. Go ahead with your questions.
Yeah, I definitely can hear you guys. So the first question I think for Logan was, so you talked about how you do a lot of research with plants and everything. And I was kind of curious, first off, what's your favorite plant to do research on, at least of the ones that you've done so far? That's my first question, I would say. And then my second one is, where do you see the field of archaeobotany going in the future?
Yeah, those are great questions. And we can go down a real deep rabbit hole with that. So as far as the plants that I enjoy working with, what I'm interested in is the process of plant domestication. So the evolution of something familiar from something that doesn't look like a food product at all. So take maize, for example, you have big, beautiful ears of corn that you can grow easily. We produce 1 billion tons of maize per year worldwide. It's the most important species on the planet. by some arguable metrics. And sort of that evolved from a tiny inedible grass called teosinte that has about 6 to 12 ears on or 6 to 12 seeds on a tiny ear, and they're so tough they would break your teeth out if you tried to eat them. So that evolutionary process from something really marginal to something that's the most important food species on the planet, that's what I'm interested in. And so the plants that then are sort of my favorites to work on are the ones that can shed light on that process and sort of the commonalities of that process. So I work on lots of different plants. Have done work on maize to try and understand the shape of that process and sort of feel out the evolutionary pathway that led to that really dramatic shift. The manioc project I'm working on now, yucca, cassava, we started that project because it's planted vegetatively. You take a stem cutting and stick it in the ground and that grows a new plant. So no seeds are involved. So that's a different form of domestication. And the reason I got into that project is because I thought we need to learn more about these clonal crops, these ones that behave a little bit weirdly. So the ones I tend to gravitate toward then are the ones that will tell us something about some particular facet of that evolutionary process, if that makes any sense. And that's kind of a non-answer, but I'm also partial to squashes if I have to pick one, because the evolutionary history of those is mastodons eating them, pooping them out around the landscape, and then mastodons going extinct. Along with mastodons going extinct, evolutionary niche opening up for humans to come in and replace that sort of commensal role with squashes. So like I said, real deep rabbit hole we can get down into with this. But as far as then the future of archaeobotany, I take a molecular approach where I'm doing less sort of microscope work and more sequencing genomes. And that's part of the future of archaeobotany for me. But there's a tremendous amount of work being done applying statistical methods, applying really all sorts of nuanced models at all sorts of scales to try and learn about people and plants through time. And so I don't think there's one sort of component of archaeobotany that's going to define the next 10 years, the next 30 years. I think it's spider webbing out in a lot of really, really interesting ways throughout the field, and we're just going to have to watch and enjoy.
That's awesome. That mastodon thing I think blew my mind. Probably, but it may break the webinar. I'm not sure. That's awesome. But Maggie Hernandez, hopefully you've got audio too. You see, you guys are so like tech savvy. You've all got audio. You had a question for Risa, it sounded like.
Yeah, hi, thank you for hosting this webinar today. So I was particularly interested in Dr. Arbolino. You mentioned that you do more work within applied anthropology. I'm a graduate student at Penn State. We are. Hey, Logan.
Hey.
And one of the things that I'm finding the most challenging is that a lot of our resources about future careers, even though our mentors and other faculty are really supportive of looking for careers outside of academia, it's been a struggle for me to see where I can take my research interest and what I'm doing for my dissertation into a more applied context. You mentioned that you had some previous experience working in repatriation and that kind of fueled you through graduate school, but do you have any other tips about how you can be marketable to different, career paths that would be cool, with an anthropology background, but not necessarily catered exactly for anthropologists?
For me, I would say it's the research and writing skills are really broadly applicable in any, more applied setting. So they're important skills, and you're going to get that in any graduate school. And if you're good at it and you like it, there's all sorts of things you can do with that are sort of outside the scope of normal academia. So I would say the research and writing skills. Also in my work, it's sort of diplomacy skills as well, and the ability to, experience working with tribes on a diplomatic level. But just in terms of generally taking anthropology skills into an applied setting, whether you're working for like a social science research firm or, somebody who does advertising or anything, it's those critical analytical skills and the research and writing skills.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maggie. So guys, we're almost out of time, and there's so many questions we didn't get to, and there's over 100 of you that have stayed on throughout this whole webinar. We're really, really grateful. And for those of you, before we start to lose you, this is something we're hoping to do every week. And if we're going to put up the recording, and also on our Facebook page, we've been live streaming this, so you can refer people to it there. But before we break up, I just wanted to ask Risa and Logan, any parting thoughts about so many of the people who've joined us today trying to figure out their anthropology careers or otherwise. Risa, what's your best advice if you had to pick one?
I mean, internships and networking, honestly, it's such a great way to get an idea of what interests you. And, if you have a good mentor, wherever you have an internship, whether it's at Smithsonian or elsewhere, it can really open your eyes to a whole variety of things that might interest you. And you might find out, well, I don't like this, but then there may be a whole bunch of other things you notice or see or do that really spark your interest and help you on your career path. And I would also recommend, if you do an internship or a fellowship or that kind of thing, is to maximize your networking. I've really been impressed the last few years. The younger generation is really good at the networking, and I think it's important to just do as much of that as you can when you're in an internship as well. So.
Absolutely, thank you. And Logan, what's the secret, man? What's the best piece of advice?
I am terrible at networking, actually. So I see its importance, and I wish I was better at it. I'm going to echo that sentiment that, especially if you can get into an internship setting, take advantage of the internship setting. So the ones we run here, our internships office is running always seminars and sort of information sessions to try and help, especially undergraduate interns, make the most of it, and sort of pull people together for conversations. And that's part of the value in that, not necessarily just the academic experience, but, talking to a lot of people, learning about what this whole world is like. And the other thing I would say from a research perspective is, one thing I hear a lot from pretty early career researchers is, I'm not sure I have the right ideas. I'm not sure I can come up with questions for research. And then the other thing I hear a lot is, it surprises me no one has yet researched this thing. So there's two sides to this coin. One are, you can absolutely come up with the ideas if you've got the curiosity. And the other part is, there's a surprising amount we don't know still. That's the nature of science and the nature of humanities. And so, it's really fun to be able to chase down those threads, and a research career is about that. So, just know that you can absolutely drive your own research and sort of have the capacity to drive those ideas. It's just about sort of chasing it until you satisfy your own curiosity. So that might be a little bit pie in the sky, sorry about that, but it's something that's been useful for me.
I think that's incredibly practical, actually, and I hear the same thing from so many. Well, to all of you who have joined us today, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And again, we'll post a recording if you want it. We hope you'll join us next time. I want to thank our distinguished panelists for joining us today, and I hope everybody learned something, and I hope everybody's doing okay today. Otherwise, thanks again, and we'll hope to have you tune in soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.